we are going to talk about the new buyout product. We're going to look at a brief introduction to the buyout process, an overview of what buyout does and how it works, and also, of course, a product tour. So to get started here today, what exactly are we talking about with buyout? Well, as you know and are well aware, we're talking about a product that Sage developed and brought a product called buyout. But more importantly, I think buyout is also a process. And it starts with of course, with the estimate, and then you are awarded the job, and that's when buyout typically starts. And at the end of the buyout process, or through the buyout process, subcontracts are awarded and purchase orders are created. And it can happen anytime, depending on when you get notice to proceed. And so, obviously, the sooner the better. But it can happen at any point before or during or before or after the notice to proceed. So we're going to help with that process. We're going to help. Generally, the buyout process in general is scope review, making sure that everybody's coordinated and their scopes are all complete with no holes or double coverage. We're looking for estimate review, in-depth review of the estimate. Did we get all our I's dotted and T's crossed? And also subcontractor review. We might also not only look for their pricing and coordination, but also their pre-qual information, like how's their liability and insurance coverage, workman's comp, licensing, bonding, maybe their financial stability, and maybe even their project management team that's going to be working on the project. So a lot of that can happen during the buyout process. And then, of course, material price review. And that's where we're going to really shine here with buyout. What kind of materials do we need to get? And what are we going to charge? What are we going to get charged for them? And so, again, that's kind of what the buyout process is. But the ultimate goal is to get those subcontracts written and those purchase orders created. So why do it? And again, the process is some research that I was reading says we can add from 1 to 10% of the profitability of the project by doing a successful buyout process. Now, this does not mean that we're advocating shopping bids and things like that. That's a whole different deal. But we can increase our profitability of the project with a successful buyout process. So Sage Buyout is a product that streamlines and automates the process of creating job cost commitments, both purchase orders and subcontracts, from an estimate. So we're going to start with Sage Estimating, obviously. We are going to go to Sage Buyout, and from there, we can go into Sage 300 Construction and Real Estate, Sage 100 Contractor, or other ERP systems. Currently, the 2 Sage systems are the only ones that Buyout integrates with, but there may be others coming as the developers work on that. It's being developed by Event One Software, and so they will consider integrating with other ERP systems other than Sage going forward. So this is the process we're going to follow. We are going to create a buyout package, which is basically an empty work file if you're used to the old buyout. We're going to group items, identify vendors, gather pricing, compare the pricing, and select the vendor. We're going to create commitments and produce those commitment documents. So that's the process that we will follow here this morning. And with that, let's take a look. So we're going to start with the estimate. So here is an estimate I've created for demonstrating buyout, and it's very simple. Just 40, just right around 50 items here, or 50 lines of information. And what I want to show you here is how information is going to flow from the estimate to buyout, and then ultimately onto job cost in Sage 300. So here in this estimate, I've got a bid grid going, and we'll take a look at this bid grid. I've got these 1, 2, 3, 4 contractors that I've taken bids from, and we've got our self-perform bid is $352, and we've got Grade Line for $350, Acme for $380, and on here. So what we can do is we can add contractors. We can work with BidGrid to get these contractors here, and then what we can do is we can say, you know what, I want to use that subcontractor right there. Notice when I did that, I got a check mark here, and the numbers up here changed as well. I now have $380 for the earthwork. Not a lot of earthwork on this project, obviously. So we've got the bid grid. We've also got here, I've got another layout here. Also got a vendor. And so here's the subcontract information here, but here's the vendor information down here. For the footing concrete and the wall concrete, I've selected Porter Ready Mix. And just selected those as the vendor here in the estimate. And what we're going to see is that Acme Asphalt in this case, or Porter Ready Mix in this case, are going to flow from the estimate into buyout. So that's really what I wanted to show you there, is that information can be entered in the estimate and flow into buyout, along with all of our other material and other items as well. So there we go with estimating. Going to keep that pretty quick and high level. Let's go into buyout. And so this is the buyout. What we need to do first is create a package. And again, a buyout package is a work file if you are used to using the legacy version of buyout. For those of you not familiar with that, there was an earlier version of buyout that worked with the pervasive version of estimating, and it was popular. A lot of people used it, but it did not. That product did not work with the SQL version of estimating. This buyout version of buyout does. It only works with the SQL version of estimating. So what we need to do is create a buyout package. And so I'm just going to call this the Tuesday buyout, and we can store it in different folders and organize our buyout packages as we need to. And here's the package. So this is the workflow we're going to follow, these tabs across the top up here. And so if you're familiar with Liberty Reports, that might look familiar with some of the Liberty Reports for estimating or Sage 100 contractor, with this kind of this ribbon bar up here that is our workflow. So we can create a buyout package, and we do that. We can have these three buttons here. We have this general information here. We have contact information here, like, do I want to enter in the owner? And so I can say the client is Big Bucks Properties and Bob is the guy. I can enter in the architect, the engineer. My company is Woodside Homes in this case. And this is important to have filled out because that will appear on some of our commitment documents as we move forward. So this is important to have. This, yeah, good to have, but not quite as much in this case yet. We also have options here. We can have the site address, the number of days in which quotes are due back, and the time and the effective date when applying stored pricing. We'll talk about that, about stored pricing, in a little while. And we can also round estimates and quantities and assign a tax group from accounting. What we can, so we create this, but the first thing we need to do is import an estimate. And so to import an estimate, we click the import button, and it is going to say, what estimate do you want? And I am going to pick the estimate we just looked at, which is this buyout demonstration estimate. And then it wants to say, what job do you want to tie it to in accounting? And so I am going to pick one that I created for our time this morning, this one right here, the buyout demonstration job. And so I've tied it to the estimating downstream, and I've tied it to the accounting job upstream. And so I am basically set, I am ready to go. Now, one thing to know too, I do not have to tie it to a job number. So there are some customers that don't want to tie it to a job number just yet until the project is ready to go. And so you do not have to do this step right here, but I will this morning just to show you the full process. You can also map estimate information to extras and job costs. And you do this information if you want to as well. And then I can import that estimate. And that's all it is really, to import an estimate. Now, there are some options here that I want to go over really quickly. And that is, one of the options is, what do I want to import? I can import labor and material, sub, equipment, and others. So I can import all kinds of different costs here. This is a limitation that we had in the previous version of Buyout, which we do not here. So if you have a lot of labor costs, just labor costs that you want to import, or maybe you're renting some equipment or other things, you can bring those in too. We're going to create groups here. That's this next step, is grouping items. And I can automatically create those item groupings based on fields and estimating. So on the item record, there is a field called a bill of materials class. That's how I've chosen to group material items coming into the buyout package. You could select any one of these fields. There's material class or description or assembly or WBS code. And you can group them in many levels. So I could group it by material class and then material description, whatever is your way of doing things. You could even group them by location. So if you do a lot of maybe multi-family, and you want to group them by building or phase, maybe your location is a phase or something like that, you could do that as well. So you can group these any way you want. I've got the material items that are grouped by bill of material class, and the subcontracts are grouped by phase. And so those are the ways, this process can be automated a little bit here as we go into it. We can, if you get this set up with in your estimating system, then when you bring it into Buyout, a lot of this work is already done. The grouping work is already done because you've assigned it here. We've got quote settings. We saw this in the options of the initial buyout package, and then rounding too. So we've got these things here that we can set up, and it will help us and speed up the process as we work through Buyout. So we've created the buyout package. We're going to now group the items. And so I can group the items by, I can create as many different views here as I want. I've got group, phase, and phase. So I can see, show me all the site work. There's the site work items that I've got, and I've got the concrete. I can say, show me all the concrete items. There's all of that. And then the finishes, or I can drill down into either one of these. So I can start to look at these items, view these items, and work with these items however I want. I've also created a view called quote group. And so here's the quote group. And these, the concrete products and finished material and form material, these are all of the bill of material classes. And so those are assigned to the items. The items are now grouped using those classes. So again, it came in automatically. This right here is the subcontract. Remember, we said that those subcontracts are grouped by phase code. So there is the phase code, and there is the subcontract for earthwork for $380 that we looked at in the estimate. So you can create views here. And when you create a view, you can say, what do you want to call it? What are the available columns? What do you want to show here? And it's looking at what these columns are. What order do you want them in? And so you can really start to work with these here. So if I wanted to edit a view, the quote group, I am going to quote group description. That's over here on the right. Here's the sort order. These are the columns that I'm going to display here in the grid. And so you can set up these views to be anything that you want that makes it easy for you to work with these items. So you group the items. Now, if I go here to all items, I've got these here, and let's say that I want to take these snap ties, and I'm going to put those with the form material. So I can select this one and I can let's send it up to form material. I've got a couple of rebar. I'm going to put these. I'm going to take this one and this one, and I'm going to put them in form material as well. And so then I've got those set. Then let's see, there we go, forms. And we'll put those in form material too. And there's ways to work with these so that you could select multiples and change them. If there was no quote group assigned, for instance, you didn't have a bill of materials class on something, you could assign that here as well. And you can also create quote groups here. The whole idea here is a quote group is just something, we're going to group these items by quote group so that when we send out requests for quotes, all of the items that we want quoted by a particular vendor are in that quote. So we need to group things together, and that's what we've done here. And we've got the gypsum wallboard and the concrete products and all items. You can see just the material and subcontract items came over from the estimate. So you're grouping the items, and then you can select the vendors. And so this is where we're actually going to assign vendors to the quote groups. And so you can see that there's a couple of pluses here. The subcontract quotes, if I look there, Acme Asphalt has been selected, has been pre-selected for, or it's been assigned to that quote group, 2315.021. Here, remember Porter Concrete, Porter Ready Mix was assigned to, we assigned that vendor in the estimate, and that is now here on this quote group. And also Acme Asphalt was that contractor that we selected in the bid grid in the estimate for earthwork. So both of those have flowed through from the estimate here to the quote group and then finally selected vendors. Now I can add other vendors if I want to. I've got options here. I can use these buttons up here at the top to include a vendor. And I can search, I'll just say concrete. And I've got Bishop, let's say Elliott Ready Mix. So now I've got two vendors here on the concrete. I can add another one down here, but I'm just going to go ahead and say, you know what, I'm going to use Acme's quote and just create the commitments from that. But I can go here to the gypsum wallboard and I can say, you know what, include a vendor. And I'm going to include all side, and I'm going to also right click on this and I'm going to include a vendor. Two ways to get to the same thing. And I'll go down here and there's Ellis Lumber. They also sell drywall as well. So now I've got some vendors selected for my quote groups. And now I can send out RFQs, request for quotes. And so how do I do that? I can click this button up here, send request. I can also come down here and send request for quotes here as well if I want to just deal with the gypsum wallboard. But I'm going to send a request and I get this window here. And so now right now I'm going to send out all quotes to all of these vendors. And I'm going to do something over here on the other screen really quickly as I go to here. I want to show you what a quote looks like when somebody gets it via email. So okay, all right. So I can send out these quotes. I can send them via fax or print or email. I'm going to switch this to Adobe so that we can see what they look like. I'm going to just select deselect these two so we can just see a couple of them there. And I want to preview what that looks like. And so here's the print preview of what a quote for like a fax would look like or something like that. So here's the quote. It's from Woodside Homes. It's to all side supply for gypsum wallboard, and they need 3,200 square feet. If I go to, so there is that one, and I've got those quotes ready to send out. So I can send these via print or fax if I want to. If I want to send via email, I can do that. I can send it either as an attached Excel workbook, or I can send it in the body of the email. And what that looks like is this. And so here is the request for quote to Acme Asphalt. and it's going to alanderson@gmail.com, and there is where Al can enter in the quote numbers here and then send this back. The yellow is where he would send back his put his numbers and send them back to us. So you can send it via email with an attached Excel spreadsheet, or you can send it like this and as part of the body of the email, or you can send it via print. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and send this the quote for the wallboard, and I'm just going to go ahead and send all of them so we can see what happens, because what's going to happen here is when I click send, this status is going to change. And so I'm going to click that, and it is going to generate a document, and we'll just go ahead and save that, and it's going to create that document. And here is that document. And I've got all side, and there is the quote for Ellis Lumber. So I've got those. I can send those out. Notice now that the status says sent. And if I went here to others, here we have those two have been sent. There's the gypsum wallboard has been sent. And so those are ready now to, those have been sent out, right? So what I can do now is, let's say I've got them back. What do I do now? And excuse me, I can say, well, I got this quote back. It is, well, it's today. And I can click OK. Now I can go in and say the quote amount is $950. We'll say, come on, oh, here we go, $950 down here. $950. Okay, so I've got $950. That says it's a $10 variance from my quote, which is or my estimate, which is $960. And I have this green arrow down here, which indicates that this all side is the low bid. Now, if I got a quote back from Ellis and they said it was $1,000, they're $40 over, and all side is still low. Also, I've got over here on the right, I've got details, a detail screen. So as I go from here's 950, 960 is the estimate, 950 is the quote, and there's the variance, and I can see more detail about the quote here. And if I switch to Ellis, there's the details for the quote. I can hide them or expand them, and so you can see a little more detail about the quote there. Let's go up here to the concrete products, and I've got a quote for $5,700 from Porter Ready Mix. I can come in here and I can say, you know what, I am going to use this vendor. So I'm going to select this quote. But before I do that, what I want to show you here is that we have the ability to use stored pricing. And so what I can do here is click on this guy and apply stored pricing. So there is a database of information in Buyout that is stored pricing. And this stored pricing has an expiration date. So I can say this stored pricing is only good for 6 months, and after that, don't use it or get new. And so I'm going to say apply the stored pricing, and I'm going to say all quote items and apply it. And it bumps that up a little bit, $105. So you can store pricing in your Buyout database and use that as you are preparing these quotes. So we've got that. I'm going to go ahead and say, you know what? Select this quote. I now get a gold star. I'm going to go here to gypsum wallboard, and I like all side because they are they're the low. So I'm going to go ahead and select them. And I'm going to go down here to Acme Asphalt, and I'm going to select that quote as well. So now I have those 3 vendors selected. So I've selected the vendors. I've and notice too now the status is selected here. If I go back to concrete, I've got selected here as well. So I have that status that I can track, and I'll show you some reports here in a minute that help us keep track of all of our quotes. So again, in this, we grouped our items. We then selected vendors, sent out RFQs, received those RFQs back, and then entered the pricing for those vendors. And now we can proceed to the next step, which is actually committing to those vendors. And so we go here to the commit tab, and we have these three commitments: material type, two materials and a sub. And what you can see here is there is a vendor number. That's important because when I picked these vendors in estimating, remember I picked Porter Concrete, Porter Ready Mix, and Acme Asphalt. I picked them from the estimating address book. Now I'm being asked what's the vendor that is tied to in accounting. So we have to tie those two together. It's a one-time deal. Once I tie them together, I'm done. You'll notice I didn't have to tie them together here this morning because I've already done them for previous demonstrations. So you can, you need to tie the contact or the address book contact in estimating with a vendor in accounting. That's what that number does there. And so what I can do now is I can check these, and I can say create the commitments. I can see the details over here of the commitments, and I can again, there's the same kind of detail that I had in the vendor screen. I can see here's the job that I'm going to send it to, and there are those commitments, and so I'm going to create them. And 3 commitments in Sage 300 construction and real estate. I've just got it set up to go to 300. You could set yours up certainly to go to 100 or to go to a text file for import into another ERP system if you so choose. We're going to say yes, and we'll let it chug here for just a minute. And it will hopefully give us a report that says things are okay. So it does, things are okay. It says commitments were sent to job cost. That's what I want to see. And these do exceed the job cost, but they have been created. So that's where we can create our commitments in job cost. Notice that there was no import, export, cut, paste, that kind of thing. It's a direct tie-in through the API or the programming interface into accounting. Notice now too that I have a commitment number. One of the pieces of setup here is, if I go to operations options, we looked at the buyout options before. These are the operations options or the accounting settings. Is I said automatically create commitments, and this is how I want the system to create the job number, or the subcontract number and the purchase order number. And it gives me an example of what it is down here. So I said S dash the job number dash 4 digits. And this is PO dash the job number dash 3 digits. And so I'm going to have the system assign the commitments. That way it always picks the next one. I never have to go in and know what the next PO number or subcontract number is. It's automatically going to create the next one. So that's a very nice feature. But I could say, you know what? Don't automatically assign it. Let me do it manually if I want to. So that's what happened here. Is the system automatically created purchase order number 1 and purchase order number 2 and subcontract number 1 there for this project. Let's do this. We're going to go to Sage 300, and if I go to job cost and tasks, and it'll jump down here. I want to show commitments. And here are our commitments. I want to get a list of those commitments for, if I scroll down here, you can see, if you look, here's 99013 is our job number that we sent these to. So there is 99.013.01 and 02, and there is subcontract number 99.013-001. And so if I look at this one, I can see that this commitment here is in job cost ready to go with those two lines. So those were created and we're ready to go now with those commitments in job cost. Now back here to buyout really quickly. One last step here. We've gone through the buyout package, the group items, selecting vendors and sending RFQs and making the commitments. We can review. And so this is kind of where we look at where are we in the buyout process. And we've got the total labor, material, sub-equipment, and other columns. I spend most of my time in the total because that gives me the overall picture, obviously. I bought out 4 items, which is 17% of 23 total. I bought out 67% of the dollars, though. I bought out $7,000 of the $10,494 total. And so I need to still buy out $3,454. So you kind of get an idea of where you are. That's what this green bar is over here. It's kind of an overall status. So you can see where you are quickly with the buyout process and also you can get into more detail. Here is the material and the subcontract detail as well. We've also got reports. And so the quote group status is a good one, I think. Tuesday buyout, we'll send that to PDF and preview it. And so here is that quote group summary. There is the summary, the vendor, but there's the status. Where are we? Well, we've committed these up here. We've got several that are new and 1 or 2 that have been sent here. So we can see at a glance what our quote group status is. That's my favorite. If we cancel this, we can look at the item report as well and see what that looks like. And I don't know. I'll cancel that and we'll just preview it here. There we go, the item report, and we'll go here and preview it. So here's our item report, and again, the group, the phase, the item, and which quote group it is in. And that's our item report. So that's the buyout process that I wanted to show you this morning. A little bit about the setup, a little bit about the process, and the way you can use it. So hopefully that was informative for you this morning, and look forward to talking to you in the future.